I want to welcome you to the committee hearing. At this point in time, we do not have a quorum, Mr. City Attorney, but I still think we should proceed, and all of the actions that we take will be deemed to communicate from the chair. Okay, with that said, Ms. Barclay, let's rock and roll. Let's start off with items 3 through 11, starting off with 3.
Yes, sir. Item 3 is a report from the Community Redevelopment Agency and the Chief Legislative Analyst, and a resolution relative to evaluating an amendment to the East Hollywood Beverly Normandy Earthquake Disaster Assistance Project, or establishing a new redevelopment project area to incorporate lands along and near the Los Angeles River.
Okay, as a communique of the chair, we will adopt the CLA report. Item 4.
Item 4 is a report from the CRA and the City Administrative Officer relative to awarding contracts to the Civic Resource Group, LLC, for the design, development, implementation of a new CRA intranet and external website, and to Cartifact, Inc. for the design, development, and implementation of CRA project area web portals.
Okay, on item 4, we'll adopt the CAO report. Item 5.
Item 5 is a report from the CRA and the CAO and a resolution relative to applying for a Proposition K grant for the proposed Vermont Median Park Phase 1 project.
Okay. Adopt the CAO report on that item. Brings us to item 6.
Item 6 is reports from the CRA and the CLA relative to awarding a 3-year contract to Tropical Creations for the purpose of providing landscaping and maintenance services in the Reseda Central Business District.
Okay, on item 6, we'll adopt the CLA report. Item 7.
Item 7 is a report from the CRA and the CLA relative to transferring Assembly Bill 1290 funds to the city clerk to establish the Cesar E. Chavez Avenue Business Improvement District in the Adelante Eastside Redevelopment Project area.
Okay, we'll adopt the CLA report on that item. Item 8.
Item 8 is a motion, Garcetti Rosendahl, relative to authorizing the release of a request for proposals for the development of a parking lot and adjacent Los Angeles Contemporary Exhibitions building as affordable or mixed-income housing development.
Okay, on item 8, we will adopt that motion. Item 9.
Item 9 is a report from Los Angeles Housing Department and the CAO relative to extending the contract with Urban Futures, Inc. for an additional 9 months to provide affordable housing occupancy monitoring services and increasing the contract amount by $300,000.
Item 9 will adopt the CAO report. Item 10.
Item 10 is a report from the Community Development Department and the CAO relative to expanding the Los Angeles State Enterprise Zone. There's also a resolution.
Okay, on item 10, we will adopt the CAO report, bringing us to item 11.
Item 11 are reports from the CDD and the CAO relative to a city loan contract of up to $1.7 million to assist the Paul R. Williams Cultural and Historical Family Community Center.
Item 11 will adopt the CAO report. Let's do item 12 as well.
Okay. Excuse me, the first 2 items?
12.
Oh,
Item
12. Sorry, sir. Thank you. Item 12 is a report from the LAHD and the CAO relative to various actions for the Round 2 of the 2009 Affordable Housing Trust Fund and 2009 Permanent Supportive Housing Program. There is an amendment to this item that's been provided to authorize the Los Angeles Housing Department to execute an amendment to the loan agreement for the Central City Apartments project to increase the loan amount and to prepare the necessary controller instructions.
So in this item, we will adopt the CAO report along with the amendment.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all of those items that we just dealt with will be communiques from the chair unless 2 other members arrive. Mr. City Attorney.
Sure.
Oh, where did you want to go, 13 or?
No, I'm just killing time.
All right, then. We'll just hang out.
That's exactly what I'm.
When you look at me like that, I think.
I'll share with you. You know, every week I come up with something, so I'll share with you this story. Now, my grandson, who is now a year and a half, has done a sleepover at our home several times. But whenever he's done this, I've been out of town. So the other night, he did a sleepover and I was excited. He and I played all day. I figured I tired him out, which I did. So I put him in bed with me. Now, my youngest child is 26 years old, so I forgot what it was like to sleep with a 16-month-old child. It amazes me how something that small takes up all the space. I woke up on the edge of the bed. And I mean, the sucker's this big. It's just amazing. So I don't know what the moral of the story is. I just know I had a rough night. That's for sure. At this point in time, I think what we do is we'll do items 1 and 2 combined. So if you'd read those items, and then as Ms. Barclay is reading the items, Ms. Torres Salinas and Pastor Epps, if you guys could please come forward.
Yes, sir. Items 1 and 2 are communications from the mayor relative to the reappointments of Ms. Alice Torres Salinas and Reverend William Epps to the Affordable Housing Commission.
Good morning. Now, these are reappointments, not appointments, so I'm not going to put you through any song and dance. In fact, if I act quickly, I might be able to get this done before the other people come, and you can go get a cup of coffee or something. And with your permission, Pastor, I'm going to ask Ms. Salinas, would you like to say something? Make a statement?
Just a brief statement. I'm very happy to be here once again before you, and I'm honored to serve the city another 4 years on the Affordable Housing Commission. I'm very grateful and very much look forward to working with the Los Angeles Housing Department and members of your committee in really looking at different policy and different programs that really address the really critical need that we're facing in affordable housing, especially in these challenging times where resources are extremely scarce and the need for housing for very low-income families and homeless persons is on the rise. So I look forward to working with you and the department and my fellow commissioners on trying to address these really critical issues.
Thank you. Well, as you can see, I mean, in unison, I wind up with two not only dear friends, but council members, which makes this committee, well, quorum. So I'm joined by Mr. Garcetti, and I'm joined by Mr. Reyes. I just have one quick question. So did you enjoy it?
Of course I did. I've been doing this for a very long time, and I really respect the people that I work with, and I enjoy very much what I do.
Okay. Now, Pastor, what I just want to say to those of you that are here today, if you ever want to be educated at a religious service, I highly recommend that you visit Pastor's Church. 8 a.m. service is my favorite. And whenever... Really rising? Well, no, I think we get breakfast after it, if I remember correctly. So I go... I'm smarter than I look. But no, if you ever want to learn, and I just can't say that whenever I get really down, I slip in to your church. So it's an honor for me to see you again. I've known you for years, and of course, I'm not going to ask any questions at all, but I will afford you the opportunity to say a few words if you'd like. You got my vote.
It's a pleasure and a privilege to be able to serve the city in this way. I look forward to attending the Affordable Housing Commission meetings. The staff is simply phenomenal in the work that they do. And as a pastor in the city, we're committed to addressing the homelessness that exists, providing affordable housing, and then to serve the city in this way to help shape policy and make sure that the city addresses the critical issue of affordable housing for the residents of the city. It's just an opportunity that I think a citizen should not pass up. So I'm just grateful that I've had the privilege to serve, and that the mayor wants to reappoint.
Okay, you made me think of one question. How do you find the time? Given all that you do, I mean, how do you find the time?
Well, you make the time because you think it's important. And this is important enough for you to make the time to set aside that time.
You guys think our schedules are hectic. Anyway, any questions?
I just want to make comments and thank you, Pastor, for being here. And I think in this moment of economic duress that we're all going through, now more than ever, we need folks like yourself who hopefully can help catch everyone that's fallen through the net, so to speak. And so I want to just thank you for your presence and the fact that you have the energy and you make the time for what you do. So I just really thank you for that. And then just for Alice, I just wanted to say, how does it feel to be on the other side of the table? I mean, when I first met Alice, this was in the early 90s, I think it was Sister Donahue. And at that time, we were just in the trenches down in Estrella Park, down in Pico Union. And her energy and her tenacity was just amazing. And I was a deputy then, so I think I was the first line of defense for the council member that time. So I want to just say thanks to see this happen and to see you at that end of the table. It's really, really great. So thank you for all your hard work.
You're welcome. I'm still in the trenches, though. I'm just at this table.
It never
There's
goes
a
up.
trench there, there's a trench here, they're everywhere.
You can make a trench anywhere. Mr. President.
Very briefly, Alice, thank you as well for your service. And what's great about both of you is that you're practitioners, not just theoreticians. And you've both been in there and you're both doing that work. And Dr. Epps, it's an inspiration to work with you. And I think everything that needs to be said has been said, but hasn't been said by everybody. So that's why I have to say it as well, which is to say that you I think, have focused in a way that few faith communities have been able to on production and on making sure that the goal of housing is not just something abstract, but something tangible. I would just ask one question of both of you, which is, in the Affordable Housing Commission, you're not building housing, you're looking at issues of affordable housing. And I think probably for these two colleagues of mine and for certain members of the council who represent certain parts of the city, our number one constituent concern is always housing, affordable housing issues. When I have my office hours, at least 3 out of 10 people are coming there on a housing issue. These days it's more like 5 or 6 out of 10. Do you feel that people out there know their housing rights? And if not, what are your goals to expand and extend that knowledge out to Angelenos in this second term of yours?
Well, if you want to get people to know what their housing rights, I think you need to fund organizers. And I think the LHD has done very well in working in partnership with groups who have a very broad constituency of tenants, low-income, homeless, seniors, through the city contract with the Coalition for Economic Survival. I think Larry Gross and his team of organizers have done an excellent job at raising the awareness of what people's rights are in housing and to ensure that they're not violated. And I would encourage both LHD and the council to look for funds that really do that door-to-door outreach and really communicate to folks that they do have the rights as tenants and they should be aware of them.
Making the information available from the Housing Commission to faith-based communities, because I get information because I serve on the Affordable Housing Commission, but I don't know the information that I get is made available to everybody in the faith-based community, so that way they can disseminate it to their congregations, disseminate it to their constituents, know what their rights are.
That's a great idea. I'd love to work with you on that and see if we can bring some other members of the faith community together. I agree that organizing is critical because there's some people who just are connected to no one and nothing, but within the faith community we can touch most Angelenos as well. So appreciate those answers. Thank you.
One more, Mr. Reyes.
I'm going to give you a case example and what I'm going through, and I think for me the bottom line is the same folks who got us into this mess are the same folks who are now supposedly dealing with the foreclosures. They understand the numbers, they understand the financing, the same people in the banks, the same people in the financial process. And no one new came in to say, this is how to do it right. It's almost like the same folks that got us into this are in it now as we're going through this delivery of programs and services. My question to you is, those individuals that we call, well, for example, I know one person who is negotiating and trying to change the terms of the loan so they could afford to stay in the property that they had been in. Yet you have real estate brokers and agents coming in and telling the tenant and him, you got to leave, we're going to change your locks. And they're not listening to them, saying, we're in negotiation with the bank still. So the bank is not telling those who are trying to sell off the property, because they're anxious to get to, they see the property's delinquent or in the foreclosure process, but they're still in there, they're still negotiating. At that level of detail, do we have experts in that, or just a matter of chance that someone can find someone that is familiar with the process? I mean, are we structured to help these people out yet, or is it just more general information, references? I mean, how deep is the help that you're aware of? See, and I think that's an issue the Housing Commission should deal with. That's something that we could work with the Housing Department and other advocates to see, are we drilling down to those very important points right before before they change their locks?
Right.
I mean, in that example, do we have that kind of expertise, or are we just by chance?
I think we do have that expertise. I don't think yet it's supported as much as it should be by the City of Los Angeles. I think there are community groups throughout the city who have folks that are coming to them on a daily basis, asking them to help them save their housing. An example would be the East LA Community Housing Corporation in Boyle Heights, who is dealing daily with people who are losing their homes. So I think if we were to be able to fund those organizations to expand their services, I think would really make an impact on helping folks who are in crisis. The second work that we've done at the department was to, and the commission, was to work with LASA on a housing prevention or homeless prevention program, which really works with families who may not have been successful at negotiating with their bank, but help them to get back into housing, help them locate housing.
But in response to that, shouldn't we be working with the banks who are doing this?
We absolutely should be working with the banks.
Is anyone talking to the banks that way? Is the commission at all, at any point in time since you've been there, have we brought in any of the banks and asked them, why is it so ruthless? Why aren't we dealing with it this way, given what the nonprofits are contending with? Have we been able, or is that, I mean, that's something I think we should do as a council, but as terms of a commission dealing with the case issues, I mean, has that been contemplated at all?
It hasn't. We would certainly consider it, but, we have consistently raised the issue about families being at the threat of foreclosure. It's something that we discuss regularly, and we're going to have to just step it up and really get to the source of the problem.
Thank you.
Okay. Then, without objection, we will forward these two names as recommended that they be confirmed by the full council. Without objection, that'll be the order. Thank you.
See you in council.
See you in a little while. Mr. City Attorney, can we now deal with items 3 through 12 that we moved as communiques from the chair? And if there's not objection by either of the members, it'll just be, without objection, a vote from this committee.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that brings us to our last item, and before we read it, I want to say to, I think I see Robert in the back, CDD, Ninos in particular, you were magnificent yesterday. Mr. Garcetti, I already told you that I thought I was impressed, but I wanted CDD to know that you were very impressive yesterday. It was one of the best presentations that you've made to the council, and if you continue to work at that level, I think you'll turn a lot of heads. Yesterday, I'll salute you because I don't have a hat on, but anyway, so congratulations. So item 13, Ms. Barclay, if you could read item 13.
Yes, sir. Item 13 is a report from the Los Angeles Housing Department relative to amending the Rent Stabilization Ordinance to maintain confidentiality of witnesses in nuisance evictions based on gang-related crime, violent crime, or illegal drug activity.
Okay, before we bring up reps from the department, let me see if I can get Betsy Handler and Elena Pop to come forward. Betsy, I saw you when I first came in, and Elena, don't think you snuck in. I saw you as soon as you opened the door. Betsy,
Here when you announced your grandson's birth.
You-
I can't believe it's been a year and a half already.
It has been. Anyway, we're now joined by Councilwoman Perry, but Betsy, you're first.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
I want to speak. My name is Betsy Handler. I'm the Director of Legal Services at Inner City Law Center, getting ready for a trial, which is why I may seem a little wacky this morning. In any case, we don't really object to the non-naming of a witness in the declaration. But I do object, and I think I speak on behalf of my fellow public interest lawyers, the proposal also takes out the language about a description of the facts which would permit a determination of the date, place, and circumstances concerning the alleged drug or weapons problem. And the reason that that's important, it's not so important if a tenant has a lawyer, because a lawyer, of course, knows how to take a deposition or serve interrogatories, although time is very tight on those kinds of things in a UD. But the person who is not represented, and I don't need to tell you that that's an enormous number, has no clue from the declaration as to what this is all about, has no starting point even to try and fight it. If at least the time and place are in a declaration, a tenant, an unrepresented tenant, could perhaps prove that he was or she was at work that time, or picking her kid up from school, or something of that sort. It's too blanket a declaration. You're accused of doing this, and therefore you must be evicted. So I would urge you to restore the language other than the naming of the witness in the declaration. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pop.
Good morning. Access to decent and safe and sanitary housing is a basic need. It should be a basic right. And we also really believe in access to justice. But in spite of that, between 40 and 60,000 people every single year, 40 to 60,000 people, that's lots of zeros, end up in eviction court without lawyers. And the studies show that the vast majority of those people, less than 2% of them are represented. And of the ones that are unrepresented, less than 1% wins according to the Blue Ribbon study, and in a recent UCLA study, not one unrepresented tenant won in court. In the second paragraph of the handout that I gave you, you see the figures for evictions filed, 72,000, nearly 73 in 2003, etc. And of those, and also the figures for representation. And so anything that you do that makes it easier for landlords to evict tenants and harder for tenants to represent themselves is contributing to this. And the bulk of these evictions are in the downtown court, and the bulk of them are rent-controlled units, and every time we lose a rent-controlled unit, we lose an affordable housing unit as the rent goes up. So we're trying to build affordable housing, but we're failing to plug this leak, which are all of these unjust evictions. I actually don't think you should change it at all. I think that any attrition, any erosion of what rights, eviction defense rights tenants have are a problem. But I think the writing's on the wall, and I think you are going to do this, and if you're going to do that, give us something back. Pass an amendment to the ordinance that requires landlords to, with the 3-day notice, the 10-day notice, the 30-day notice, also give a referral list of the nonprofits where people can go for help. And it should also be served with the summons and complaint. And if it is not, it should be a defense to the eviction. That will do a lot to plug that hole. And I'll leave enough of these for each of you, because I think it's really important that we really get the word out about what representation is available.
Thank you. The department.
Good morning, council members. Hakim Ordazai, Housing Department.
Good morning, council members. Roberto Adapa from the Housing Department.
The council asked us to look at amending the RSO to protect witness confidentiality in essentially drug and gang evictions, and also in our review to look at the city attorney's vacate program. And in our review, we determined that due process and the evidence code precluded and really preempted local ordinances that would deny witness information to a tenant being evicted based on accusations of those and testimony of those witnesses. However, what we determined was that we could remove the requirement in the declarations that are filed with the Housing Department to name witnesses during the initial phase of the actual proceedings. And that's why we're recommending that particular amendment. The declarations are essentially ministerial forms that are filed with the Housing Departments at the very outset of this process. And subsequent to that, the litigation that proceeds in courts, there are notices required. Courts have interpreted the notice requirements to have the names of the witnesses often, or the facts that allow a witness to allow a tenant to be able to mount a defense. We're not talking about any of those specific requirements. We're merely discussing the declaration that is filed with the Housing Department, that is a ministerial form that's filed with the department. We also looked at the vacant program itself, and the vacant program actually allows landlords in cooperation with the city attorney's office, and based on information that's provided to them by the city attorney's office, to evict criminal tenants. The RSO incentivizes these evictions by allowing landlords to decontrol the rent on those units. The vacant program has proven successful. In fact, the state legislation that's currently pending before a full Senate vote after recess would expand and extend the vacate program, which is a pilot program that was initiated in Los Angeles County pursuant to state legislation that was adopted by Governor Wilson. We are also asking for a verbal motion to harmonize and make consistent the RSO provisions with the recent changes adopted by the council, which expanded the vacate program evictions to include unlawful weapons and related charges.
Ms. Perry?
This is just kind of a silly thing, but I'm reading this handout that Ms. Pop left, and that's got a nice summation of a lot of groups that we already work with when we are trying to help our constituents. And I would be very interested in even reproducing this, and I don't know if they have this on their website, but the color of the paper is difficult to reproduce. And if there's another, is it on your website?
Councilwoman Perry, if that's the same list of referrals, we do have those. I haven't seen the specific one that you're looking at.
You want to take a look at it?
Sure, but we do have a form with
Here, yeah, is this
we do
does somebody have it on?
at the Housing Department
Okay.
to tenants.
Does somebody have it on their website?
It is on the LHD website, an approved list of nonprofits and legal services.
Okay, so this is the same list?
I am not sure if it's the
Can
same.
you take a look at it? The reason I'm asking is because in field offices, we are often the first point of contact for people who have been evicted in our field council offices. They don't necessarily find their way down to LAHD first, so it would be a very useful resource, and I'd like to reproduce it and download it. So if it's on the website, is it the same list?
It is not the same list, but it includes the majority of the folks that are on this list are on our approved referral list that we provide to the constituents. In addition, you should know, by point of information, that the summons and complaint, which is served to folks who are facing unlawful detainers or evictions, on the face of the summons, because I remember this a while back, it includes, if you are evicted and you need help, it includes some of these organizations, it includes nonprofits, and it includes legal services agencies that they can call for services with regards to answering that unlawful detainer.
Okay, but you're online, this form is online with your department?
It's a different referral, which includes a majority of these folks here.
Because again, the reason I'm asking is because we can kind of expand the network of the distribution of this kind of information through our field offices, and I just basically wanted to know if we can download it, or if and it's hard to reproduce this color, but, so we can put it out in our field offices too.
The only point that I would make to that, Councilwoman, is that on our referral list, there are nonprofit organizations who provide legal services. This list includes private attorneys, and we would have to get an opinion from our city attorney as to whether or not private attorneys can be included in a city-sponsored or city-sanctioned list.
But we have a functionally equivalent form, Councilwoman Perry, that we have on our a website that your local staff can refer constituents to get that information.
Mr. Reyes?
I think the point, and this paragraph stands out in my mind that gets people out of trouble, is when they say with exclamation marks, you have 5 days to file an answer in court. Act quickly. I mean, that phrase alone, that sentence, a lot of folks aren't aware of that. And by the time they get there, it's too late. And that's what we should be amplifying, I believe, and I'm just echoing what Councilman Perry's saying. But can we have statements like that where you just give some basic directives to people that are in trouble? Because I wasn't aware of that. And people come in and, well, the staff is busy, come back next week, we got a big caseload, by that time it's too late. So, yeah, those are pivotal points that we should be able to identify.
Unlawful detainers are summary proceedings that usually, from the time the unlawful detainer is filed and an answer is filed within 5 days, you're in court within 20 days. So it is an expedited process. And so the folks who are facing evictions need to seek legal assistance as soon as possible. So we concur with that.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Thank you. I'm supportive of the notion of this because we deal with a lot of cases in which I know there's landlords who have had really tough times evicting folks who have gang and drug activity. I've talked with a number of them. But what protections do exist for a landlord right now using this now anonymously, which I can understand the protections when it's right? What are the protections for a tenant or a landlord just decides, they see some casual drug use or something like that, and somebody could be using medical marijuana or whatever, and now without any naming of witnesses, what's the kind of due process protections here?
The due process protections for the tenant, correct, President Garcetti? How courts have interpreted this process is that there is a notice requirement first when the landlord is going to evict someone, and in the notices, the courts have interpreted the requirements to include naming of witnesses and circumstances and facts that would allow that tenant to be able to mount a defense against the accusations that are being leveled at them. Also, in the court proceeding itself...
But this would change that, right?
This would not change
It does not, okay.
This only, that's the point that we want to emphasize, is the recommendations here merely change the initial declarations that are filed with the Housing Department.
To set in motion, right?
Under the RSO, if you want vacancy decontrol, we need to have a police report as well. And that's one of the things that is involved in the vacate program that you asked us to look at. That the vacate program, the RSO, in order for a landlord to be able to decontrol the rent, they require the eviction to be based on information that's provided by the city attorney's office through the vacate program. But also, in further response to your question, in the eviction process itself, in the litigation, under the evidence code and on the rules of discovery, the tenant is able to obtain information, additional information that they may need or that's being used against them to evict them to mount a defense to that action.
Okay.
Seeing, hearing no more. Mr. Reyes.
I'm just, when you just said the tenant can gain information, you have a person who's about to get kicked out, they're probably trying to make their bills, more than likely they're there because they didn't have a job or they're trying to find a job, and you got all these details that they have to attend to. I mean, to get this information that you refer to, what do you mean?
Well, first off, Councilman Reyes, nothing in the recommendations that we're putting forward changes any of the specific rights the tenants have in that process when in the eviction proceedings in court. Nothing in this recommendation changes that.
So that's set in law.
It only has to do with the declarations that are filed with the Housing Department. It doesn't change the notices issued. That's an interpretation by the courts. It certainly doesn't change the state evidence code requirements. The point that you're raising is an important point. I think the testimony that we received by the public speaks to that. Legal representation makes a difference in eviction courts. That is a fact. And by providing information such as the ones that are included in this form that the Housing Department already does, and that's already also provided to defendants of unlawful detainer proceedings by the Superior Court, those are important steps that are taken to help those tenants access representation. That's a fact of the system, that if you do have representation, you are likely to have a better outcome than if you go through the legal process by itself. Our recommendations here don't take away any of those protections that are already there.
Gotcha. Okay.
If I may.
Yes, of course.
You know.
So what would you have done if I said no? Of course.
I just said thank you, Your Honor. And stop. You know, we certainly stipulate that, you know, law-abiding tenants should be able to have the quiet and use and enjoyment of the premises. And we understand that there are tenants tenants who engage in illegal activity, drugs, gangs. And this is what this speaks to. And we also understand that sometimes it's difficult for landlords to pursue or commence evictions without witnesses, because those witnesses may be intimidated by those same factions before they go to court. So we understand that. On the other hand, you know, the most credible evidence that the landlord can bring, that the court recognizes, is probably law enforcement. The law enforcement folks who go out there and put a stop to the gang activity or to the illegal drug activity. But earlier, Councilmember Reyes asked regarding outreach to tenants. As part of our outreach, we have, as you know, we have a transmittal and item in progress, whereby we're going to do an expansive landlord-tenant outreach, whereby we will tell tenants what their rights are and landlords what their responsibilities are. But part of that process is that within the Housing Department, we have an investigation and enforcement unit. We have housing investigators who have paralegal backgrounds. And part of our responsibility is to make sure that the tenants out there know that they can access the Housing Department at the earlier stage, when they get the notice, before it gets to the unlawful detainer. And we would investigate those complaints as quickly as possible to ensure that the eviction does not occur. But if the eviction does occur, we concur with Councilwoman Perry that there needs to be some type of remedy or some type of assistance that these tenants can go to seek legal assistance to assist them with the unlawful detainer.
Okay, then no more questions. Then without objection, we'll adopt the Housing Department's report and draft ordinance.
There's some amendments.
Mr. Westbrook.
I was getting ready to say, with the amendment.
There's
Yes.
additional amendments.
With the additional amendment. Is that okay?
The city attorney had requested that it also be amended to request the city attorney to prepare and present the ordinance rather than review it.
Okay,
Sorry, sir.
no problem.
Thank you.
Now, let me ask this. Is there any more business before this committee?
Absolutely not.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
Then we're adjourned.
Thank you.